My parents chose signing away their parental rights over getting sober when I was 4 years old. Now, 30 years later, I've succeeded without them, and they just contacted me because they think I owe them money. My birth parents, who signed me away when I was 4 years old, are now legally demanding $150,000. You see, I don't remember much about my early years, just my dad taking me to dark closets at night to relieve himself, or the sight of my mom emptying my piggy bank, then staying awake for 72 hours on the meth she bought with every last cent. Child services finally got involved after I walked out of my house with a needle in my pocket, and my neighbor saw me. They arrived to check up on me, and my parents, high as kites, on the spot, chose to voluntarily terminate their parental rights rather than fight for me. My grandmother on my mother's side stepped in and became my legal guardian. Growing up with her was like living in a different universe. She cooked me food and changed my diapers for me. She worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat, mornings at the hospital cafeteria and evenings cleaning offices, but she never missed a school play or parent-teacher conference. Still, I couldn't shake the fantasy that my parents would someday show up, reformed and ready to love me. And so, I wrote them letters every month from ages 7 to 14. Grandma had their address, and though she discouraged it, she never stopped me from sending them. Not once did I receive a reply. I'd check the mailbox obsessively, convinced that this would be the day. It never was. The breaking point came during my high school graduation. I was valedictorian, and Grandma had saved for months to throw me a party. 2 days before the ceremony, my father called. I hadn't heard his voice in 15 years, but I knew it instantly. He said he'd heard about my graduation and wanted to attend. My hands shook as I gave him the details. I even reserved 2 seats in the front row, moving Grandma's friends to accommodate them. They never showed. I spent the entire ceremony scanning the crowd, barely hearing my own speech. The empty seats seemed to mock me. That night, while everyone celebrated, I locked myself in the bathroom and sobbed until I couldn't breathe. Grandma found me there and held me while I finally accepted the truth. I was nothing to them but a closed chapter. I channeled my pain into purpose. With Grandma's encouragement and the help of need-based scholarships, I got into a top university for pre-med. Medical school followed, then a grueling residency in cardiac surgery. Grandma attended every milestone, even when she had to use a wheelchair. When I finally became an attending surgeon at 32, my first act was to pay off her mortgage and renovate her house. My nephew, my cousin's son, had always been like a little brother to me. When he got into medical school last year but couldn't afford it, I didn't hesitate. I liquidated my investments and covered his first 2 years' tuition, about $120,000. It felt like completing a circle, giving him the support I'd received, and that's when they resurfaced. The call came on a Tuesday evening. I was reviewing surgical notes when an unknown number appeared. My mother's voice was older, raspier, but unmistakable. No, hello, no, how have you been for the past 29 years? Just, I heard you're paying for David's medical school. My mouth went dry. How did you get this number? Just some digging around. Doesn't matter. Anyway, your sister needs help with college. My what? Your sister. She's 19, pre-law at state. Very smart, but tuition is culling us. The casual way she said it, like we'd been chatting regularly, like she hadn't abandoned me, like I should care about a sibling I'd never known existed, made my stomach turn. I don't have a sister, I said. Don't be difficult, she responded. You helped your cousin's kid but not your own sister? I hung up. I thought that would be that. Until the lawsuit papers arrived at the hospital 2 weeks later, creating a scene that still makes me cringe. My parents are suing for $150,000, claiming filial responsibility under an obscure state law that makes adult children potentially liable for supporting indigent parents. Their argument is that by giving money to my nephew, I've demonstrated the financial ability to support them and their daughter, my real sister, as they put it in the filing. What makes this particularly painful is that I am Chinese, and in China, maintaining a respectful relationship with your parents as their son or daughter, despite how they treated you, is looked at as crucial. This seems to be the exact angle my mother and father are taking. Several of my parents' relatives, people who never once checked on me during my childhood, have begun calling, telling me I'm bringing shame to the family by forcing my parents to sue. My lawyer thinks we should win, but she's warned me that these cases can get complicated, especially with the cultural component. She's concerned that despite any sane person being able to see I'm in the right, I may actually lose this case. In Chinese culture, filial piety isn't just a nice concept, it's a fundamental obligation that supersedes almost everything else, including how badly parents may have treated their children. My parents have apparently been telling anyone who'll listen that I'm a heartless daughter who got rich and forgot where I came from. I hope to God I win. The lawsuit papers came with a process server who made sure everyone in the cardiac unit saw me being served. My hands trembled as I read through the legal jargon during my lunch break in the hospital break room. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed with an email from their lawyer, an amended complaint adding defamation claims. They were now alleging I'd been spreading malicious lies about their past to damage their reputation in the community. I set down my coffee and stared at the new pages. The defamation claims centered on conversations I'd had with extended family members who'd reached out after hearing about the lawsuit. Apparently, mentioning the abuse and abandonment constituted deliberate character assassination. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd terminated their rights to avoid dealing with their substance use being documented, and now they claimed discussing that documented history was defamation. My shift ended at 7, but I stayed late to finish charting. The parking garage was nearly empty when I finally headed to my car. That's when I saw her. My mother stood near the elevator, positioned perfectly to intercept me. No coincidence. She'd clearly researched my schedule. I just want to see my successful daughter. Her voice carried a across the concrete structure as two nurses from pediatrics walked past. They slowed, recognizing the drama unfolding. My mother had dressed carefully, modest clothes, minimal makeup, looking every inch the concerned parent rather than the woman who'd stolen from her 4-year-old for substance money. The accusation burst from me before I could stop it. "You gave me up!" The words came out as an angry shriek that echoed off the walls. My professional composure shattered completely. Security approached, but not toward my mother, toward me. She remained calm, hands clasped, while I looked like the unstable one. "I'm sorry you feel that way," she said softly, loud enough for the gathering audience. "We've been in recovery for years. We just want to make amends." Her breathing pattern triggered something visceral, the same rhythm I remembered from those nights in the closet. My father's breath against my neck. My body recognized it before my mind did. Security gently suggested I head home. My mother walked away slowly, stopping to chat with the nurses who'd witnessed everything. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, hands shaking too badly to drive. The next morning brought a new crisis. Dr. Martinez, my surgical partner, caught me between procedures. His daughter had a piano recital that evening, the same time as an emergency valve replacement. We alternated coverage for personal events, an unspoken agreement built over 3 years of working together. But tonight also happened to be when my lawyer could meet about the amended complaint. I made the choice that felt inevitable. Patient care came first, always. I told Martinez I'd cover the surgery and rescheduled with my lawyer. What I didn't know was that my parents had been watching, waiting for exactly this kind of opening. While I spent 4 hours in the OR replacing a failing mitral valve, my parents visited my grandmother's church. They arrived during her regular Wednesday night service, sitting in the back at first, then gradually moving forward as people recognized them. By the time I emerged from surgery, they'd established themselves as loving parents in recovery, trying to reconnect with family. My phone had 17 missed calls. The first voicemail was from Grandma's friend, Mrs. Chen. "Your parents are here at church. They're telling everyone they're making amends. Your grandmother doesn't know what to do." The second came from my nephew David, panic evident in his voice. "Auntie, the financial aid office called. They're saying there might be issues with my funding because of some lawsuit. What's happening?" The third was from Grandma herself, her voice small and confused. "They're saying they want to make things right, that they've been sober for years. I don't know what to believe." 3 crises erupted simultaneously. My patient began coding just as I was about to leave. I ran back to the OR, adrenaline overriding exhaustion. While the team worked to stabilize her, my phone lit up with texts. My parents were now at Grandma's house. David's school was threatening to freeze his funding pending resolution of family financial obligations. Saving my patient meant missing any chance to intercept my parents. By the time her vitals stabilized and I could leave, they'd spent 2 hours with my grandmother, weaving their narrative of redemption and reconciliation. My dedication to my patient, the very quality that made me a good doctor, had been weaponized against me. I drove to Grandma's house at midnight. She was still awake, sitting in her kitchen with a cup of tea that had long gone cold. The smell of my mother's perfume lingered in the air, different from what she used to wear, but somehow still recognizable. "They seem different," Grandma said quietly. "Your father goes to NA meetings. He has a sponsor." He showed me his 1-year chip. The next few days blurred together. My father's sponsor, apparently unaware of the full history, offered to be a character witness. My parents had crafted their recovery narrative perfectly, taking just enough responsibility to seem genuine while painting their lawsuit as a desperate attempt to reconnect with their estranged daughter who refused to forgive. David called again, confused and hurt. My mother had reached out to him directly, offering to help with his student loan paperwork. She said she has experience with financial aid from putting my aunt through college, he told me. "Why didn't you tell me I had an aunt?" The crack in his voice broke my heart. My mother had found his weakness, the crushing weight of medical school debt, and positioned herself as helpful, understanding. She was already rewriting history, and David, overwhelmed with school and finances, was starting to listen. I discovered the bank statements by accident during a home health check for Grandma. Her desk drawer was slightly open, and I saw the familiar logo of her old bank. Inside were statements showing withdrawals matching the dates of my childhood savings bonds. Bonds Grandma had helped me purchase with birthday money, report card rewards, every small achievement celebrated with a small investment in my future. The evidence was right there. Proof that my parents had cashed bonds meant for my education. But I was at Grandma's house as her medical proxy, checking her medications and blood pressure. Taking those documents would violate HIPAA regulations. I stood frozen, evidence of theft visible but legally untouchable. That's when the visiting nurse arrived for Grandma's weekly check. She found me photographing the statements with my phone. The situation looked exactly like what elder abuse investigators warn about. Family members snooping through financial documents during medical visits. "I'll need to document this," the nurse said carefully, her eyes sympathetic but professional. "It's protocol when we observe family members accessing financial information during health visits." The hospital's legal department contacted me the next day. They needed my parents' medical histories for my malpractice insurance renewal. Standard procedure, but only my parents could provide their information. The trap was elegant. Refuse and risk my coverage, or contact parents who'd use any interaction as evidence I was engaging with them. My insomnia worsened. I'd catch myself driving past their motel after shifts, needing to know where they were, what they were planning. My hypervigilance triggered Grandma's memories of my father's departure. "You're acting just like when your father left," she said one evening. Always watching the door, jumping at sounds. My trauma response, invisible for decades, now looked like instability. My parents joined the hospital auxiliaries Facebook group. Their first post included photos with patients from the children's ward, volunteers in matching t-shirts spreading cheer. When I screenshot the post to send my lawyer, warning that they were infiltrating my workplace, I looked petty and paranoid. The daily drive-bys continued. I couldn't stop myself. One afternoon, I followed my mother's car to the State University campus. My cousin saw me parked outside the law building and later asked why I was stalking them. The word stung because it wasn't entirely wrong. I was tracking their movements, documenting their locations, building evidence that made me look obsessed. My parents' next move was masterful. They helped Grandma sign up for better Medicare supplemental insurance, genuinely saving her money on prescriptions. But now, they controlled her coverage details, creating leverage over her medical decisions. My father's signature on the forms was dated, the same date, I realized with a chill, as one of the closet incidents I'd documented in therapy years ago. Exhaustion affected my work. I caught myself about to administer the wrong dosage of heparin, correcting just in time. No harm done, but the incident report noted family stress affecting performance. The words would sit in my file, evidence of declining capability. My best friend Sarah wanted to support me, but her husband, a social worker, laid out the brutal reality. If I officially support your claims about your grandmother's living situation, I'm mandated to report. CPS would have to investigate her living conditions too. The system designed to protect was forcing allies to choose between friendship and legal obligation. Colleagues whispered after finding me crying in the supply closet between surgeries. Someone posted in the Concerned Medical Professionals Facebook group about the unstable doctor whose family drama was affecting patient care. I realized with growing horror that my professional reputation, built over decades, was crumbling in real time. My mother's lie about visiting monthly happened to align with Grandma's standing hair appointment. The hairdresser, when questioned, confirmed seeing my mother regularly, not visiting Grandma, just getting her hair done at the same salon. But the testimony would sound like corroboration. Even my friends were being pulled into their web. My mother offered to connect Sarah's boutique with cheaper suppliers through her recovery network connections. The offer seemed genuine, helpful even. Sarah admitted she was considering it. Small business margins were tight, and the savings would be significant. When I tried proving they'd never visited using hospital security logs, I discovered I'd violated HIPAA by accessing visitor records without proper authorization. Being right made me look criminally negligent. My need for evidence had led me into legal jeopardy. After documenting another lie, I stopped at a bar near the hospital. One beer to steady my nerves. A patient's family member photographed me and posted it to the same Facebook group. Doctor with family addiction issues drinking alone at bar. The narrative wrote itself. I was becoming my parents. We stood at the courthouse steps, neither side able to back down. They couldn't withdraw without admitting their grift. I couldn't concede without endangering Grandma and enabling their manipulation. The battle would destroy my medical career or expose their abuse. There was no middle ground left. My mother started attending the hospital's public health seminars on addiction recovery. She positioned herself in the front row during each session, sharing her story of redemption with staff and patients alike. The recovery phrases she quoted sounded familiar. They were lifted directly from emails I'd sent years ago, begging her to get help. She weaponized my own words about forgiveness and second chances, presenting them as her personal journey of transformation. The confrontation happened in the hospital cafeteria. My parents cornered me during lunch, voices raised just enough to draw attention. I accused them of harassment. They claimed I'd threatened them. By the end of the heated exchange, we both believed our versions completely. The security footage would later show aggressive gestures from both sides, making it impossible to determine who was the aggressor. My lawyer's discovery request uncovered something devastating. My old emails to my parents, written between ages 7 and 14, surfaced in their evidence file. Page after page of a desperate child begging for love, promising to be good if they'd just come back. The letters undermined my narrative of being an abandoned child who'd moved on. Instead, they painted me as someone who desperately wanted reconciliation until my parents finally reached out. My sister began telling her pre-law professors about her situation. She'd repeat the same story in study groups and casual conversations, how her successful doctor sister refused to help with tuition because of a grudge against their parents. The narrative spread through the university community, each retelling adding another layer of perceived cruelty to my character. Grandma's Ring doorbell, which I'd installed for her safety, became evidence against me. The footage showed my parents arriving with groceries, helping with yard work, checking on her welfare. Without context, they looked like devoted children caring for an elderly parent while I appeared absent. The timestamps showed they visited during my work hours, a detail that made my dedication to my career look like neglect. The family court judge reviewed my abuse allegations with skepticism. Without police reports or medical documentation from my childhood, my claims seemed like convenient excuses to avoid filial responsibility. The voluntary termination papers showed my parents had signed away rights, but not why. The judge saw a daughter trying to punish parents who'd already paid for their mistakes with decades of separation. I discovered my parents had been attempting to access old joint bank accounts that Grandma had forgotten existed, accounts from when my mother was a teenager. Using Grandma's saved passwords, I changed the login credentials to prevent access. But my browser history revealed these protective actions, making it look like I was hiding assets or manipulating Grandma's finances for my own benefit. My sister's Instagram account exploded with posts about working 3 jobs to pay for college. She photographed herself at each workplace: coffee shop morning shift, campus library afternoon position, restaurant night nights and weekends. The posts tagged our extended family and included captions about how her doctor sister, who paid $120,000 for a cousin's education, wouldn't help her own sibling. The local Chinese community shared the posts widely, each share adding another voice to the chorus of condemnation. My therapist received a subpoena for my records. The request specifically asked for documentation of any concerning statements about parents made during our sessions. Years of processing trauma would now be twisted into evidence of an unstable woman fixated on revenge. The therapeutic space where I'd worked to heal became another weapon in their arsenal. I attempted to record my father during a chance encounter at the grocery store, but he spotted my phone immediately, loudly announcing that I was trying to manufacture evidence. Other shoppers turned to stare as he played the victim, a father being persecuted by a vindictive daughter. The incident report filed by store security described me as the aggressor. My parents volunteered to handle Grandma's doctor appointments, presenting themselves as caring children stepping up while I was too busy with work. They now controlled her medication schedule, appointment times, and had access to her medical information. Each appointment gave them more leverage, more opportunities to present their narrative to healthcare providers who didn't know our history. The Chinese hospital interpreter faced an impossible choice when my parents filed a discrimination complaint. She knew the truth about our family situation, but needed her job to support her own children. When asked to verify translations during a mediation session, she chose her family's security over accuracy, allowing my parents' version of events to stand unchallenged. Small details began to haunt me. My mother wore Grandma's jade bracelet, a family heirloom that had mysteriously been gifted to her. My father used Grandma's reading glasses, claiming his were broken, and she'd insisted he take hers. The scent of Grandma's lavender perfume clung to my mother's clothes after each visit. These tiny invasions felt like theft, but were impossible to prove. My parents made an offer through their lawyer. They would drop the lawsuit if I signed an affidavit stating the abandonment had been a misunderstanding and agreed to provide monthly financial support. The letter emphasized how this would bring peace to Grandma's final years, allowing her to see her family reconciled. My refusal was immediately reframed as choosing ego over an elderly woman's happiness. A revelation shook my certainty. Court records showed my parents hadn't been high when they terminated their rights. They'd been in withdrawal. The timeline I'd constructed in my memory was wrong. They were still addicts who'd chosen substances over me, but the specific detail I'd clung to for decades was inaccurate. This small error made me question everything else I thought I knew. Grandma's deposition changed everything. Exhausted by the conflict tearing her family apart, she revealed she'd kept a diary for 30 years. The diary documented every time my parents had asked for money, every visit that ended with cash changing hands. Both legal teams sat stunned as she produced notebook after notebook, her shaky handwriting chronicling decades of financial requests. But the diary revealed something else. The money Grandma gave wasn't stolen or coerced. She'd given it freely, desperately hoping each payment would maintain a connection between my mother and me. Every dollar was an investment in a reconciliation that never came. What I'd seen as theft, Grandma had seen as the price of keeping hope alive. My cousin faced an impossible decision. Supporting me meant potentially exposing her own children to my parents' manipulation. She chose to maintain distance, protecting her family while privately sharing disturbing information. My parents had asked detailed questions about life insurance policies, about who would care for Grandma if something happened to me. The implications chilled us both. I began adopting my parents' tactics, arranging accidental encounters with my sister at her campus coffee shop. Our first conversation was carefully orchestrated. I asked about her classes, offered study tips, played the helpful older sister, all while noting the bruises on her arms that makeup couldn't quite hide, the way she flinched when her phone rang, the exhaustion that went deeper than working 3 jobs. Hidden in Grandma's filing cabinet, I found old CPS records from after my removal. The documents revealed investigations and supervised visits I didn't remember. My parents had been given chances to regain custody, but had failed to meet basic requirements. The records would be crucial evidence, but I'd found them before my parents realized they existed. The advantage was temporary, but vital. A new player entered the game. My biological maternal aunt, mentioned in the CPS records, contacted me after seeing news of the lawsuit. She claimed Grandma had promised her the house decades ago, when she'd helped care for infant me while my parents partied. Now she wanted to ensure her claim was protected, adding a third party to our already complex battle. The three-way conflict consumed my attention. While managing the lawsuit, protecting Grandma from my parents, and defending against my aunt's property claim, I missed Grandma's heart medication refill. The pharmacy noted the delay, adding another mark against me in the narrative of a negligent granddaughter too busy fighting to provide proper care. My credit cards maxed out from legal fees while my parents used Grandma's social security payments for their motel room. The financial inequality became another weapon. They presented themselves as struggling parents, forced to live in poverty while their wealthy daughter hoarded resources. The fact that I'd spent everything defending against their lawsuit was conveniently omitted. The confrontation at Grandma's favorite dim sum restaurant traumatized everyone present. My parents arrived during her weekly lunch with friends, turning a peaceful meal into a battlefield. The elderly waitress, who'd known our family for decades, broke down crying, begging us to stop. The restaurant owner asked us all to leave and not return. Another safe space destroyed. The hospital administration placed me on leave pending review of how family drama was affecting patient care. The official letter cited multiple incidents, the medication near near miss, emotional outbursts witnessed by staff, and complaints about my erratic behavior. My replacement was a young attending whose mother attended NA meetings with my father. The connection felt deliberate, another move in their chess game. I slept in my car in the hospital parking garage, too exhausted to drive home, but unable to face my empty apartment. Meanwhile, my parents told everyone at church they were caring for the mother who'd disowned them, painting themselves as saints, returning good for evil. The narrative spread through the congregation, each retelling adding another layer of martyrdom to their image. Grandma's plea broke through my determination. She found me organizing evidence files at her kitchen table, surrounded by bank statements and legal documents. Her words were simple but devastating. She begged me to let it go before the fight called me too. She was tired of being the prize in a war between her daughter and granddaughter. The pain in her voice made me realize how our battle was destroying the very person I claimed to protect. My investigation into my parents' past began affecting innocent people. A young resident who'd provided information about their hospital visits faced disciplinary review for violating patient confidentiality. Her daughter's innocent question about why mommy was sad added another weight to my conscience. Her husband threatened divorce if she remained involved with an unstable colleague's family drama. Despite knowing the destruction I was causing, I couldn't stop. The compulsion to gather evidence to prove my truth overrode everything else. Each person who tried to help became collateral damage, their careers and relationships strained by association with my toxic situation. The very qualities that made me a good surgeon, determination, focus, refusal to give up, were destroying lives around me. David's question during a lone paperwork session stopped me cold. He asked what if Grandma actually wanted to help them. The simple query exposed an assumption I'd never examined. Was I protecting Grandma or using her as a weapon in my own war? My inability to immediately answer revealed more than any accusation could. Desperate to counter the unstable narrative, I made a calculated disclosure. During a staff meeting about the importance of mental health support, I publicly revealed my psychiatric hold during residency. The admission was meant to show I'd sought help and recovered, but it backfired. Now I wasn't just unstable. I had a documented history of mental health issues that my parents could exploit. The CPS records revealed another devastating truth. My parents had another child after my removal. The supervised visit notes showed concerning behavior, but no formal abuse reports were filed. They'd been given another chance while I couldn't protect a sister I didn't know existed. The guilt of this discovery ate at me. If I'd known, could I have saved her from whatever happened in that house? My parents' lawyer filed an emergency motion to advance the trial date, citing Grandma's declining health. The move caught us off guard. My lawyer was at a conference and couldn't respond immediately. The expedited timeline meant less time to prepare, less time to gather evidence, less time to build our defense. Another tactical advantage gained through careful planning. In a moment of painful clarity, I realized my mother genuinely believed she deserved support. In her mind, the best years of her life were sacrificed to addiction caused by postpartum depression. She'd constructed a narrative where she was the victim, where her children owed her for the suffering she'd endured. The delusion was complete and unshakable. My father's motivations were more complex. Shame about failing his family, mixed with a genuine belief that my success somehow belonged to him. In his twisted logic, my achievements were only possible because he'd given me up. Therefore, he deserved compensation for his sacrifice. The entitlement was breathtaking in its narcissism. The investigation reached a new low when I decided to use Grandma as bait. I arranged for her to mention a non-existent inheritance during a phone call, knowing my parents would reveal their true intentions. The plan worked. They immediately began asking detailed questions about amounts and access. But I'd broken my promise to keep Grandma out of the direct conflict, crossing a line I'd sworn to respect. The kind doctor who'd always worked within the rules was disappearing. In her place stood a calculating strategist Grandma wouldn't recognize. I manipulated conversations, set traps, used people's trust against them. Each victory felt hollow because it required becoming someone I despised. The transformation was necessary, but soul-crushing. Evidence finally came through my sister relationship. During a late-night study session, exhausted and vulnerable, she admitted her parents coached her testimony. She showed me text messages with specific phrases to use, stories to tell, emotions to display. The admission was recorded on my phone, hidden in my backpack, but watching her cry about losing the only family she'd known made the victory taste like ash. We sat in the courthouse bathroom, both crying for different reasons. She wept for parents who used her as a weapon. I wept for the sister I couldn't save and the innocence we'd both lost. The moment of connection was real, but it couldn't overcome the circumstances that divided us. We returned to opposite sides, both victims of the same manipulators. My parents' counterclaim for emotional distress found sympathy with the elderly judge. He saw a family torn apart, adult children fighting over money, while an elderly woman suffered. The nuances of abuse and manipulation were lost in the simple narrative of filial impiety. My parents' tears seemed genuine to someone who didn't know their talent for performance. Everything hinged on Grandma's testimony, but her memory issues, exacerbated by stress and medication changes, made her an unreliable witness. She confused dates, mixed up events, and sometimes forgot which daughter was which. My parents' lawyer would exploit every inconsistency, every moment of confusion, to discredit her account. My past kindness became another weapon against me. I'd taught my sister basic medical concepts during our coffee shop meetings. Helping her understand anatomy for her pre-law required science credits. Now she asked why I'd help her with homework, but not help our mother with basic expenses. The question, delivered with genuine confusion, cut deeper than any accusation. The medical community divided sharply. Colleagues who dealt with addicted family members understood the manipulation tactics and supported me quietly. Others, particularly those who believed in redemption and second chances, saw me as unforgiving and cruel. The hospital cafeteria became a battlefield of whispered conversations and chosen sides. Research into filial responsibility law revealed a harsh reality. The statute required ability to pay, but made no allowances for emotional abuse without documentation. Abandonment alone wasn't an exemption unless accompanied by criminal convictions or restraining orders from the time of the abuse. My parents had been clever enough to avoid creating that paper trail. I called in a 30-year favor from Grandma's friend at the hospital cafeteria. She'd witnessed my parents' visits over the years, seen them leave with cash while Grandma went without new clothes or proper groceries. Her testimony would establish a pattern of financial exploitation, but she made it clear she wouldn't risk her pension by admitting she'd helped hide assets from them. The friend testified carefully, confirming the pattern of taking money while providing no real support. But without admitting her own involvement in protecting Grandma's resources, her testimony lacked the full impact. She walked a tightrope between truth and self-preservation, another casualty of my parents' manipulation. The hidden diary revealed something darker during cross-examination. Grandma had documented veiled threats my father made during visits, comments about accidents happening to elderly people living alone, observations about her medication schedule, mentions of how easy it would be for someone to fall downstairs. She'd kept meeting them anyway, believing her presence prevented worse outcomes. The courtroom fell silent as the prosecutor read entry after entry of documented intimidation. My hands trembled as I watched Grandma explain her reasoning. She'd gathered evidence while staying vulnerable, choosing potential danger over losing all connection to her daughter. The sacrifice stunned everyone present, including my parents' lawyer who shuffled papers nervously. The safety deposit box key appeared in Grandma's purse during a recess. She'd maintained it secretly for years, paying cash to avoid paper trails. Inside, we discovered recordings she'd made using an old cassette player hidden in her knitting basket. The tapes captured my parents discussing their financial demands, planning their manipulation tactics, laughing about my emotional letters. But the evidence came at a cost. Grandma had lived in fear for years, documenting threats while staying accessible to protect me from worse schemes. The recordings revealed she'd known about their substance use continuing long after they claimed sobriety, yet she'd maintained the fiction to preserve my hope. I sat in the courthouse hallway processing this revelation. My grandmother had sacrificed her peace of mind, living under constant threat, because she believed maintaining some connection would protect me. The weight of her choice crushed my chest. The judge ordered a recess while reviewing the recordings. My parents huddled with their lawyer, faces pale as they realized their own words would convict them. My mother's hands shook as she fumbled with her NA coin, the prop that had served her so well now useless against recorded truth. During the break, I made a decision that surprised even my lawyer. I instructed her to pursue civil protection rather than criminal charges. Grandma wouldn't want her daughter in prison, and I needed to honor that unspoken wish. The choice felt like accepting Grandma's philosophy: protection through boundaries, not destruction. My father's addiction counselor certification became the next revelation. The document listed his sobriety date as 18 months ago, directly contradicting his testimony about visiting Grandma while clean for years. Bank records showed withdrawals from Grandma's account during his supposed recovery period. I presented the timeline without attacking their recovery journey. The facts spoke clearly. Financial exploitation had continued during active addiction, not despite recovery. My mother realized too late that I'd avoided the trap of seeming vindictive about their sobriety claims. The forensic accountant's testimony proved devastating. Decades of suspicious withdrawals aligned perfectly with my parents' visits, escalating whenever they faced financial pressure. The pattern was undeniable: systematic exploitation disguised as family reconciliation. My aunt testified next, initially to support her own property claim. But faced with evidence of my parents' exploitation, she couldn't maintain her lies. She confirmed the pattern of financial manipulation, admitting she'd watched them take money while Grandma went without necessities. Her testimony, given reluctantly to protect her own interests, corroborated everything. The judge ordered comprehensive evaluation of Grandma's current capacity and a full forensic accounting of her finances. The court would determine whether financial abuse had occurred and what protections were necessary. My parents' faces crumbled as they realized their lawsuit had triggered exactly the scrutiny they'd tried to avoid. The bank's fraud investigator authenticated the recordings and withdrawal patterns. His clinical analysis stripped away emotional manipulation, presenting facts that couldn't be disputed. The evidence showed not just taking money, but calculated exploitation of an elderly woman's love for her daughter. My mother's breakdown came suddenly. Faced with undeniable proof, she began sobbing about how addiction had stolen her life, how she deserved compensation for her suffering. The courtroom watched as she revealed her genuine belief that her children owed her for the pain of her own choices. The delusion was complete. She truly saw herself as the victim. The judge's questions cut through her performance. He asked specific questions about threatening Grandma, about taking money while claiming recovery. My mother's answers revealed the depth of her entitlement. She believed her suffering justified any harm to others. When offered the chance to pursue elder abuse charges, I chose carefully. Criminal prosecution would destroy any chance of my sister maintaining a relationship with them if she chose. Instead, Instead, I requested civil protection orders and financial restitution to Grandma's estate. My sister watched from the gallery as our parents' carefully constructed narrative collapsed. The evidence revealed them not as recovering addicts seeking reconciliation, but as calculating manipulators who'd used recovery language to exploit sympathy. Her tears showed recognition of patterns she'd experienced but couldn't name. The judge's ruling came down firmly. The filial responsibility claim was denied completely. My parents were ordered to cease all contact with Grandma and repay documented thefts. A restraining order would protect Grandma from further exploitation. They could maintain their recovery journey, but not at their victims' expense. The Chinese community's reaction split dramatically. Some elders maintained that filial piety superseded everything, that I should support parents regardless of abuse. Others, particularly those who'd experienced addiction in their families, understood that cultural values couldn't excuse exploitation. The divide forced uncomfortable conversations about tradition versus protection. My colleagues' responses varied similarly. Some disappeared from my professional life, uncomfortable with the messiness of family trauma made public. Others approached me privately, sharing their own stories of addicted relatives and manipulation. The shared experiences created unexpected bonds. My parents left the courthouse still proclaiming their victimhood to anyone who'd listen. They'd lost their lawsuit but maintained their delusion, telling reporters I was heartless for choosing law over love. The narrative would continue in their community, but legal protection now prevented them from acting on it. I returned to work gradually, rebuilding my practice while managing the aftermath. Some referring physicians pulled back, uncomfortable with the notoriety. Others sent more patients, respecting my commitment to both family and boundaries. The practice evolved, smaller but more aligned with my values. My sister reached out through her academic advisor, not our parents. She wanted to understand our family history without their filter. I arranged for her to access the CPS records and court documents, letting facts speak rather than competing narratives. The trust fund I established for her education came with ironclad protections. Our parents could neither access nor influence the funds. She could pursue her dreams without their financial manipulation, breaking the cycle that had trapped previous generations. David's funding was restored once the court ruled against my parents' claims. He threw himself into his studies with new appreciation for the sacrifice behind his education. Our relationship deepened through shared understanding of family dysfunction and the choice to break free. Grandma's relief was palpable. The constant anxiety of managing her daughter's demands while protecting me had lifted. She could finally live without fear of manipulation or threats. Her health improved markedly once the stress ended. We established new routines with clear boundaries. I managed Grandma's medical care while a court-appointed fiduciary handled her finances. The separation protected both of us from future accusations while ensuring her needs were met. My sister and I began building a relationship independent of our parents. Coffee meetings became study sessions, then genuine conversations about our different but connected traumas. We couldn't recover our lost childhood, but we could choose our future relationship. The hospital's review concluded with recommendations for better support systems for staff facing family crises. My experience had exposed gaps in their employee assistance program. Changes implemented afterward would help future colleagues navigate similar situations. Some bridges burned couldn't be rebuilt. Friendships strained by my investigation never recovered. Professional relationships damaged by my perceived instability remained distant. The cost of protecting Grandma included permanent losses I had to accept, but unexpected connections emerged. Healthcare workers who'd hidden their own family traumas found courage to seek help. The Chinese community's younger generation began questioning blind filial piety that enabled abuse. My story, painful as it was, sparked necessary conversations. 6 months later, I sat with Grandma during her cardiac checkup. Her vitals showed the improvement that came with reduced stress. We didn't discuss my parents or the trial. Instead, she taught me to knit, the skill she'd used to secretly record evidence, now repurposed for healing. My sister texted about her first-year grades, all A's despite everything. She'd channeled her pain into purpose, much like I had years ago. The cycle of destruction had broken, replaced by conscious choices to build rather than tear down. The restraining order held firm. My parents' attempts to circumvent it through flying monkeys failed when faced with legal consequences. They'd moved to another state, spreading their narrative to new audiences who didn't know the full story. I kept the trial transcripts in my office safe, not as weapons, but as reminders. The documents proved that choosing protection over exploitation wasn't cruel, but necessary. Cultural values that demanded suffering in silence had no place in my life. Grandma's 85th birthday arrived peacefully. No unexpected visitors, no manipulation, no threats, just family who'd chosen protection over performance, boundaries over bondage. We celebrated quietly, safely, finally free from the fear that had shadowed decades. The scars remained. Trust came slowly, hypervigilance lingered, and family gatherings still triggered anxiety. But healing happened in small moments. Grandma laughing freely, my sister calling just to chat, David thanking me for showing him that love includes limits. My parents' lawsuit had intended to destroy me. Instead, it exposed their exploitation and freed 3 generations from their manipulation. Justice came not through vengeance, but through boundaries that protected while allowing space for their own journey. I returned to surgery with renewed purpose. Each patient received the focus I could give because my personal life no longer hemorrhaged energy into endless crisis. The dedication that my parents had weaponized weaponized, now served its intended purpose, healing others while maintaining healthy limits. The ending wasn't clean or complete. Trauma doesn't resolve neatly, and family dysfunction leaves lasting marks. But we'd chosen truth over comfortable lies, protection over cultural expectations, and genuine love over performed obligation. In that choice lay our freedom.